Hi, honey. How are you doing? Leo's gonna be joining me today, apparently. Can you say hello to everybody? My name's Leo, and I love my mama. I love my mama. I love her so much. Okay, can you go lay down? Welcome to this video. I know, honey. You are just a little camera star. So today we're doing a super casual, obviously, because I'm sitting on the floor, question and answer session about intuitive eating. So I polled you guys on Instagram and asked you, what are your questions that you have? Second thing, I'm doing a question and answer for YouTube of just your intuitive eating questions. So this, I can go a lot more in depth into things, so let me know what you got here. I pulled 15 of them and we're gonna answer them today. I don't really think this needs too much of an introduction. I have a full introduction video on what is intuitive eating that I can link to up there and in the description for you guys. It really gives you a good overview, but really quickly is intuitive eating is really not just eating whatever you want, when you want, right in the moment. It is a lot of what I kind of describe as marrying your internal knowledge with your external knowledge. So by internal knowledge, I mean those things like your cravings or what you want in the moment. And your external knowledge is that nutrition information or any dietary restrictions that you might have. Can you hear him in the background? He's like literally rolling around. Let me show you guys. Theodore, can you like stop? Thank you. So it's really, like I said, this merriment of really both of those knowledges, our internal and our external knowledge. This video is for informational purposes only. It is not meant to serve as nutrition or medical advice. If you do need medical advice related to any information covered in this video, please reach out to your medical provider immediately. This video is provided as is with no representations or warranties expressed or implied. And like I said, I polled you guys, so let's get right on into your questions. So the first question is on intuitive eating and being vegetarian or vegan. Here's the deal. That veganism, your ethics, is part of that external knowledge. So absolutely you can be a vegan or a vegetarian and practice intuitive eating. Like I said, remember, it's not just based on our body's cues. It takes into account nutrition information and ethics into there as well. So that would be kind of going behind what I call the why of your food choices. I talk about this a lot in my Food Freedom Membership, the Society, where I teach you guys how to do all of this stuff, but really it's why am I making this decision? It's just like eating a carrot doesn't necessarily mean that you're quote unquote dieting. It just means that maybe you wanted a carrot in the moment. What matters is the why behind that decision. If you're saying, I'm gonna choose this plant-based meal because I believe in animal rights or sustainability or whatever the reason for you deciding to follow a vegan or vegetarian diet is, that goes into the why. That's part of that knowledge, that external knowledge, so absolutely you can do it. Okay, the next question is, how can I limit my sweet tooth while still intuitive eating? I want all the cake and double doozy. Double doozy, do you mean like I want double the cake, or is double doozy a thing that I'm not aware of? Here's the deal, guys. I have a full blog post on this. I'll be posting a lot of resources in the description for you. In the beginning phase, you are going to want to eat a lot of those previously restricted foods. For me, it was ice cream and peanut butter, the things that I never necessarily allowed myself. You're gonna want to eat those things at first because your body doesn't know that it's not gonna be restricted anymore just by saying it. You almost have to show it. This is one huge reason of why I teach the way I do in the Society, of working more slowly, more methodically, more one by one, because it can be very overwhelming. And it's on your gut too, guys. I'm not talking about just like psychologically overwhelming. Every time we change something in our diet, our guts take time to adjust. What I would say is kind of, you can take that approach. I have a blog post on it. I'll post down there as well. This is really normal in the beginning because you have to show your body that these foods are not off limits. As you go through this process, yes, you start realizing, oh, so I don't want to eat that much cake. Like that doesn't make me feel good, nor does it taste good that great when I eat it in those quantities. But to understand that, a lot of times you do have to eat more cake than you usually would. And it's really this kind of like misconception with social media that intuitive eating is just, oh, so I'm gonna boom, boom, start craving veggies because that's where I see everyone. Yes, you can get to that point, but it's this, like I said, my blog post on what to expect when you start intuitive eating, kind of like what to expect when you're expecting. We'll kind of go through all of it, but this is so normal and it's a phase that does pass. Question 3, is it possible that your set weight will increase if you consistently overeat? I have a whole video on this I can link to up there. Really, the set weight is essentially essentially our bodies have a thermostat where it will keep our body weight in a range that it wants to be. Dieting a lot of times tries to force that weight outside of that range. And what happens is our body sees that as, it starts to panic. It's like, oh my gosh, food's not restricted. I'm not getting enough energy. So what it will do is it'll turn up that thermostat and increase your set point weight to pack on some extra energy so that if that happens again, it's prepared. It's literally trying to save your life. It's not a bad thing, but the more that we go on diets, the more that we yo-yo diet, that weight, we lose it for a short time, then we regain it. That's why a lot of times we have that, what people call rebound weight gain, is because our bodies are trying to protect us. Our set point weights can increase throughout our life with a bunch of diets. What happens in the beginning of intuitive eating is, yes, you're gonna wanna eat more and likely past fullness, but that doesn't necessarily mean that your set point weight is going to increase because of that. Personally, I think it's because of those more repeated rounds of dieting versus this phase that has to happen in the beginning of intuitive eating to likely, like I said, kind of eat past fullness so that you know what that feels like and you can gauge what feels good. So if you consistently overeat, it's possible, but really what does it are those repeated loss and gains. And obviously every single person is different. And for all of these questions, this is not medical advice. This is just me sharing my experience. And if you do have any questions, be sure to reach out to your specific medical care provider immediately and chat with them. It's that kind of coping mechanism that your body has to save itself from that repeated loss, that repeated gain of those diets. Does that make sense? Another question is how to not get upset about gaining weight in the beginning stages of intuitive eating. This is really tough. When we have taught to fear weight gain for so long, it's not gonna happen overnight. I think that what I say to people is that you should expect your body to change as you go through this process, whether that's permanently, whether that's for a short time. But like I said, anytime our bodies ingest a different diet, we change something in our diets, it's normal for our bodies to take some time to adjust to that. Whether it's, you're gaining mass, whether it's you're just bloating, our bodies are likely going to change in those beginning phases. And I draw this out in my intuitive eating, what is intuitive eating video. Kind of imagine it like you have this increase, like I said, it could be bloating, could be overall weight, and three things can happen from there. You can simply maintain that, and that's your new weight, creating an overall gain. You could come down a little bit, and maybe you just end up maintaining your previous weight. And also you could kind of come down and end up lower than where you started. Weight gain, loss, and maintenance all happen with intuitive eating. It's really this process of rewiring your brain that I talk about a lot. I have other videos on how to handle weight gain I can link to up there as well. I'm going to give you lots of resources, but it's a process, and to expect ourselves to be okay with it automatically, like right away, is just unrealistic, I think. Providing community, really remembering why you're starting this process, separating your self-worth from your weight by talking about your characteristics, not about your body. All of those things can be super helpful, and just talking it out, talking about those fears that you have, I think is such, don't bottle it up. It's so important to just talk about those things. I'm eating less with intuitive eating. How do I prove to my friends I'm actually recovering and not restricting? So with this, like I said, weight gain, weight loss, and weight maintenance all happen with intuitive eating, depending where you're at in relation to your set point weight, right? For some people, especially if they turn to food to eat emotionally, you might end up eating less overall, and that's not bad. It just is, you guys. So I think that the first thing that you should do is just reflect and say, am I restricting? Is this actually what my body needs and what I want? Or am I trying to fit this vision of intuitive eating of what I think it is? Just get really honest with yourself. From there, I think a lot of people don't really necessarily understand intuitive eating. So really sharing, like I said, my what is intuitive eating video could be helpful, explaining it to them. But also sometimes it's not your job to make people believe the same things that you do. It's just what I kind of say is you can tell them, I don't expect you to understand. I don't necessarily expect you to do this as well, but I hope that you can trust that this is the best thing for my body. And like I said, I go back to make sure that if you do have a previous history of restricting, that you truly are listening to your body and you're not kind of kidding yourself into what intuitive eating should be. It's a lot about just being honest with yourself. I think this whole process is, what do I like? What do I not like? What feels good? What doesn't feel good? It's just really regaining and getting honest with ourselves. What if I need to lose weight? So I think we need to really get rid of this idea of needing necessarily to lose weight. We know from studies that you can be healthy at every size. Now, that does not mean that my body is going to be healthy at any size, but it means that what size I'm healthy at could be different than what size someone else is healthy at. We all have our own sizes that we're healthy at. Does that make sense? Highly recommend the book Health at Every Size to explain this, but how I approach this is to say, what sort of health promoting behaviors can I start to implement and not focus on my weight? We know that when we focus on weight and intentional weight loss, that a lot of times we're going to regain that weight and then some. So that's how that yo-yo dieting, really that cycle starts, and that's how our set point weight can increase. Instead, shift that and say, what sort of health promoting behaviors could I implement? Could I have some fruits and vegetables that are packed with things like antioxidants, or could I move my body in a way that feels good to help with my cardiovascular health? And focusing on that may or may not have an impact on your weight, but it will have an impact on your health. So I think that just kind of flipping the way that we're viewing that question of health and focusing on those health promoting behaviors. Can intuitive eating be twisted by disordered habit? This kind of goes along with that question that I talked about earlier and just being really honest with yourself. Here's kind of like my benchmark of intuitive eating, like the golden question, if you will. Take a food or anything that you're not sure about, like, is this really me eating intuitively? And ask yourself, if I did the opposite, would that give me guilt, stress, or anxiety? So say you're saying, I genuinely prefer salads over sandwiches. Ask yourself, if I were to have a sandwich, that's my only option for lunch, would I feel guilt, stress, or anxiety, or do I really just crave, a more crisp, fresh salad? If there's stress or anxiety, that's likely kind of some, like you talk about those twisted, disordered habits kind of creeping in, because there shouldn't be any guilt, stress, or anxiety with intuitive eating. So that's kind of the question that I view all your choices through that lens, and that will kind of help guide you. But yes, a lot of times I lied to myself for such a long time, you guys, of, oh no, I prefer this food. I didn't. Be honest with yourself. I'm trying intuitive eating and I keep eating way past fullness in the evenings. Any advice? For this, a couple of things. I would say there's so much more to intuitive eating than we think, than what we necessarily see on social media. So what I would say for this is to ask yourself, first of all, are you eating enough during the day? If you're finding that you're biologically hungry in the evening, adding some more things during the day could really help with that. And again, if that gives you guilt, stress, or anxiety, then I think that's a rule that we need to work on. There can also be an emotional layer in the evening. Like I said, intuitive eating is so much more complex than just focusing on the food. Ask yourself, what are you looking for? Is it in the evening you're, eating for comfort, those sorts of things? Ask yourself that. Another thing to keep in mind is I do almost intentionally eat past fullness in the evenings, because I know if I don't, I'm gonna be hungry before bed. And there's nothing wrong with eating before bed, but it's just, sometimes it gets annoying when you're laying in bed watching TV and you have to get up. What I do is I eat past fullness. I'll eat to an 8 or so on the hunger scale. I eat a little bit past fullness so that I know that I'm gonna be carried through the evening. This is a little bit about that practical hunger. Say that you try to add something in the day. Maybe you're like, well, I'm not necessarily hungry during the day. You use some of what's called practical hunger to say, okay, I know I usually get really hungry in the evening, so I'm gonna add some, an extra snack, or scoop a little bit of extra peanut butter on something in the morning to give me more energy, so that when the evening comes, I'm not as ravenous. What is the best way to start / how to know if you're doing it? So I think that the best way to start, guys, is start with the intuitive eating book. Actually read that. Take up all the social media information that you can, but also it's really important to actually read the book. I will say that. I have all the members of the society go through that. I recommend they read it. But for how to know if you're doing it right, it sounds so ambiguous, but it's truly a feeling, you guys. There is, and I always say this, there's no bumper sticker to intuitive eating, okay? There's never an end point, because our bodies literally change day to day and throughout the life cycle, right? Our bodies when we're 20 is not going to be the same as when we're 30, 40, 50, 60. What happens is you start to understand the process of listening to your body, and it becomes second nature. How do you know if you're doing it right? It's a feeling. You start to not think about food as much. You start to not obsess about it. You start to become more flexible. You start to have more mental space. There's so many different indicators, and I think those indicators are different for everyone, but those are just a few things to kind of think about. You will feel better both mentally and physically. How to eat intuitively with a strict schedule. I teach, so my times for meals are set for me. Again, guys, I got you. I got a full blog post on this. I'll link down there, but basically this comes into practical hunger. And I use this a lot. I used it yesterday for lunch. I had a meeting and I knew that if I waited until after the meeting, I was gonna be ravenous. So that's one thing you can do, is to say, okay, if, this is my time to eat, will I be ravenous by the next time that I'm able to eat? And if the answer is yes, we want to avoid those extremes of the hunger scale, because that's typically, if we get too hungry, we're gonna swing towards the other side and get too full, because it's very, very difficult to listen to our hunger and fullness cues. That's one thing that you can do. But then again, like I said, just being practical and knowing that this is gonna be the best thing for my body. I know it needs nourishment. I might not necessarily be hungry, but that's one thing that you can do, and I'll link to that full blog post for you. Guys, intuitive eating is not just eating on a whim. Like I said, it's so much more complex than that. There's so much more to it. How do I deal with battling my hate of food waste? I feel bad not finishing a meal. I feel you, girlfriend. I am a big fan of containers, putting leftovers for later. I make these like kitchen sink salads that I'll just like take a bed of greens and throw whatever leftovers I have on it. It's surprisingly delicious. One thing to note is that as you go through this process, you're more able to gauge your hunger and fullness. You'll notice this in my full days of eating. Like, I am able to gauge my hunger. There's not as much like leaving on my plate, going back for seconds necessarily. Yes, there is sometimes, but as you go through this process, you're actually going to reduce the food waste because you're going to be more able to listen to your body. For now, focus on things that you can repurpose, putting in containers, but know that the food waste is actually going to decrease the more that you do this work. IE and IBS. So frustrating. Any tips for constipation, GERD, bloating, even when intuitive eating and listen to my body? I think that first, like I mentioned, like when you start this process, there's gonna be bloating, there's gonna be indigestion because you're putting different foods into your body. Another reason why I say you don't have to just stock your pantry on day number 1, because that's gonna take a hit to your gut. I'm not saying that's wrong, some people can do that, but for me, it helped really just working slower and allowed me to connect with the food more and kind of prevent me from getting in that, like getting stuck in that rebellion phase. So that's what worked for me, and that's what I teach. For this, again, know that it's this outer wisdom also compared with our inner wisdom. So it's taking this outer wisdom, and the way that I teach in the society, we use something called a food and mood journal to reflect on, okay, what foods make me feel good? What foods do I not feel good with? Got a full blog post I'll link for you. With this, it's really saying, okay, I know these foods or eating a certain way makes me feel bloated, gives me, you know, constipation, whatever it is, and it's mirroring that knowledge. So start to reflect on that. Use that food and mood journal to allow yourself to do that. All right, guys, we got 2 more left. Usually, how long do you have to practice it before it becomes second nature? I love your account. I love you guys. It depends. So ambiguous, I know. I would think months, not weeks or days. I get DMs all the time, you guys, saying I've been intuitive eating for a week and I'm not getting it. You're not supposed to get it after a week, right? Think about how long you spent in diet culture and how long that influenced you. I would say at the year mark to the 2-year mark. I would probably say about the year mark, people are really like, wow, my life has really changed. After a couple months, you're like, wow, you know, I'm seeing changes, but I just want to be honest with you guys. This is not a quick fix. This is not easy work, but it's so freaking worth it. And it again becomes just second nature kind of after that, but it doesn't mean that the work stops because we're different at every stage of our life. Okay guys, I'm gonna leave you with some practical tips here. So the first couple steps to get started, aside from reading the book. I love this because she knows I'm gonna tell you to read the book. I think that a couple things are important. What you can do today, I'll kind of just walk you through stage number 1 of the society. There are 5 different stages that I bring you through in that membership to show you how to actually implement this. The first stage is all on ditching diet culture, and what we focus on there is detoxing our social media, detoxing our life from diet culture, so getting rid of those influences and filling it with, you know, resources. So social media, YouTube channels, books, all of those things to really immerse you in this. Create yourself an anti-diet bubble. From there, you need to start honoring your hunger and fullness and getting in touch with those cues. And that a lot of times means getting hunger cues. So giving your body consistent, adequate energy throughout the day so that it can start giving you those signals. This does not necessarily mean that you need to start, again, filling your pantry. I actually really don't recommend that. Just start on the hunger and fullness side of things, okay? And just start to notice satisfaction. What foods do you like? What foods don't you like? Just really practice that awareness and some of that mindfulness. And the third piece of it is to start rewiring your brain, as I call it. We really need to change the pathways that our brain are using to think. I'll give you a quick analogy. I know I've been talking for a while. Our brain is like following a path in the woods, okay? So we've been following this path in the woods for so long, it's clear, it's easy to follow. Rewiring your brain, and this is the diet culture path that we're following, rewiring your brain is like creating a new path. So at first, you're gonna be trekking through a lot of the woods, a lot of the brush, a lot of the leaves to create that new path. But the more that you do it, the more that that path is going to be traveled and it's gonna become clear. At the same time, the leaves are gonna be falling on the old path, and you're gonna start just thinking the food freedom way, the intuitive eating way, and all those old diet diet culture thoughts are going to lessen. It's not that you're never going to have those thoughts again, but it's that you have now these two paths, and it's easier for you to remind yourself of the intuitive eating path and walk that path. Rewiring your brain using mantras, affirmations, journaling are all tools that I recommend. All right, guys, that was packed full of info. I took a lot of your questions there. If you just like these super informal chats, we can do them on lots of different subjects. So let me know in the comments if you like this video, if it was helpful. Be sure to, like I said, give it a like, comment, and hit subscribe. You can even hit the little bell to be notified every time a new video is uploaded. And guys, I think that just the first step is really to just start exploring and do this thing that you're doing right now. Watch videos, watch content, consume that content, and just dip your toes in. It doesn't mean you have to dive in head first. You can just dip your toes in and say, let me see if this is for me. I think that's a really great thing to do. With that, I will see you guys next week with another video. Same time, same place. See you later.